House Bill 873 relating to aquatic life prohibits the sale of aquatic life for aquarium purposes. First off, the ONR.
Testimony in opposition.
Okay. Hawaii County Council Member Kuali'i in support. Conservation Council for Hawaii in support. Hanalei Watershed Hui in support. Animal Rights Hawaii in support. Is that on your testimony? Thank you. Humane Society, Inga.
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Inga Gibson, Hawaii Director, Humane Society United States, in strong support. You all are well aware that this is an issue that we have been involved with for some time. I submitted comprehensive testimony, and I know there's a lot of people here to testify, so I won't repeat myself except to say that our reefs and these animals that are taken for the aquarium trade are our public resource. They belong to all of us, to all the peoples of Hawaii. These animals are not staying here. They're being collected and shipped to the mainland. They are not benefiting the peoples of Hawaii, let alone the environment of Hawaii. The trade is destructive to our reefs, the overall health of our ecosystems. Unlike fishing for food and subsistence, this is a trade that captures these animals for mortality rates that you would never see in other species collected or used in the pet trade. The rates that these animals are dying because they are not suitable for lives in captivity. Some of these animals, or the majority of these animals, won't survive even a matter of weeks. That's why when they're sent to pet stores on the mainland, if there's even a guarantee that they arrive alive, it wouldn't exceed 14 days. These are wild animals. I think a lot of the public, a lot of people don't know that these animals are captured wild from our reefs. These animals are not aquacultured. They're not captive bred. These are wild animals that we are basically giving away to those without a benefit to us here in Hawaii. So we urge your strong support. I know that there are other measures up for consideration regarding a moratorium. We believe that it's time that this trade be stopped and that we return the health to our reefs and to these species, these wild species that belong here in Hawaii. So urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Reef Rescue Alliance. Renee?
Yeah. Thank you, Renee Amberger, for the Reef Rescue Alliance in strong support. I don't think this is one case where we, on one hand, we would agree with DLNR's assessment that there are more fish in the areas where aquarium collecting doesn't occur. So we agree with that. Where aquarium collecting doesn't occur, there are more fish. But in the areas open to aquarium collecting, there are far fewer fish, and that's shown by the DLNR's own data. On the Big Island, what that means is that for 2/3 of the reefs, basically this year and last year, there were about half as many fish. We're talking about yellow tangs. On the majority of the reefs, there are half as many fish, and it's because of aquarium collecting. Some years, it's as much as 80% less. That's a significant impact. On this island, the island of Oahu, Dr. Gail Grabowski from Chaminade documented that the fish are down by 90%. So the science is there that the trade is having a huge impact. And what you have Hawaii County Council, you have Kauai County Council, you have Maui's mayor, who've all come out asking for the legislature to please ban the aquarium trade statewide. And they disagree with DLNR's assessment that it's sustainable. I think we would have to, an interesting conversation would be, let's talk about what we mean by sustainable. If by sustainable, it was meant that the natural population was only down by 5%, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation if the trade were depleting the population by only 5%. But when you're talking about the level of take, which is unlimited, taking a population down by 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%. That's why the people in this state are in such strong support for ending the trade. There are cultural conflicts, there are ethical conflicts, there are environmental conflicts, and none of them are being addressed by the rules put forward by DLNR. So whether they were recently passed by DLNR or proposed by DLNR, the community concerns have not been addressed, and that's why it's important for a legislative solution right now. That's why a ban is needed. The counties, Maui County passed 2 laws regulating the trade. Hawaii County is considering the same. All the council members who are supporting those measures say the same thing. A ban is what's needed. A ban is what's needed today. So we are in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association, Keith Davenport. In opposition, Association of Zoos and Aquariums.
Good morning, Chairman Ng, members of the committee. I'm Bruce Carlson. I'm the former director of the Waikiki Aquarium. I'm also a professional associate with the AZA. I co-authored this testimony. You have long testimony. I'm going to just read a abridged version of it for time. On behalf of the 228 accredited member institutions of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our concerns in opposition to House Bill 873. AZA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the advancement of accredited zoos and aquariums in the areas of animal care, conservation, education, science, and recreation. The AZA supports science-based approaches to protecting our coral reefs. However, the statements purporting to justify HB873 are not based in fact. The bill states that aquarium species are 3 to 10 times more abundant in protected areas. It's actually much less than 2 times. Additionally, while the bill states that regulations are failing to maintain fish populations at the necessary levels, intensive monitoring in West Hawaii has revealed increasing populations of some species, such as yellow tangs. 15 years after the creation of fish replenishment areas, the population of yellow tangs has increased 64.5% in the fish replenishment areas and has not significantly declined in areas where collecting still occurs. Overall, the present population of yellow tang in West Hawaii is estimated to be 3.6 million fish in the 30 to 60 foot depth range. That's where most of the collecting occurs. Furthermore, there's no evidence that coral reefs in West Hawaii have become algae dominated. Now, 30 years ago, when I started testifying on the same issue, 30 years ago, opponents of fish collecting warned that Hawaii's fish species were going extinct from over-collecting. Today, with excellent management from the state of Hawaii, none of Hawaii's fish species is close to endangered or threatened. The opponents' arguments have now shifted, claiming that Hawaii's coral reefs have been degraded by collecting activities. However, we believe that current management practices are working as intended. Coastal fisheries can be managed by monitoring fishermen and establishing protected or fishery replenishment areas where no fishing is allowed. In the tropics, many reef fishes spawn thousands of eggs every day throughout the year, and the eggs and larvae are widely distributed, including to areas where fish collecting is permitted. This is the management system that allows extraction to continue on a sustainable basis. Thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony, and we urge you to hold House Bill 873. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Peterson. In opposition, Ron Tubbs. Opposition. Good morning.
Aloha, Senators.
Representatives.
Representatives, I'm sorry. I'm nervous. So anyway, yeah, I'm opposed to House Bill
Please say your name
873.
on the mic. Sorry. It's for the camera, so to put your name on the ribbon underneath.
I'm opposed to House Bill 873. I'm an aquarium fisherman. I have been for 35 years. Excuse me?
Please
My
say your
name is Ron Tubbs,
Thank you.
and I'm an aquarium fisherman, and I'm opposed to House Bill 873. I've been in Hawaii waters for 35 years. When I first started fishing, some of the same fishing grounds that I'm still fishing today, there was less fish than there are now. I'm seeing more fish than I've ever seen before in the Hawaii state waters. I'm seeing an incredible abundance of fish. And this year we had one of the largest population explosions that has ever happened. In the past, there's been quite a few population explosions, but this one doesn't compare to the past explosions. So there's more fish than ever, and we have more laws on the books. We just spent years working with DNLR in both Kona and Oahu to develop laws to make sure that there is more regulations to make sure that we do have sustainable fisheries. And I don't even think that if those laws were not passed, we would still be sustainable. But to satisfy our opposition, we passed many of the laws that they asked for in the past, and that has not satisfied them. They continue changing their desires, and their true conflict is to just put us out of business. And why? Because they're opposed to what we do. It's gone from scientific reasons to moral reasons, because they don't have the scientific basis to back up their statements. And I can back up every statement I'm making with science, facts, and news reports. We're not having coral problems right now. We did have some severe issues with the coral bleaching, but they have all recouped, and I was very concerned about that. It was only the shallow corals, but corals are the fish habitat, and that's a very deep concern. And instead of concentrating on the aquarium fish trade, which only collects a small percentage of the fish taken in Hawaii, on Oahu maybe 17%, on the Big Island maybe 20%, on Maui 0% of the aquarium fish taken, or there's no aquarium fish taken on any of the other islands. We're a small, narrow fishery. The areas we do go to are very sustainable. We keep going back to the same places because the fish replenish, and we rotate our fishing areas, and we'll be able to fish them forever at current rates. We have not increased in the volume of fishery catch. We have not increased in the number of fishermen significantly. Actually, there may actually be a decline in both of those. I've worked for years with researchers. I started about 25 years ago working with Waikiki Aquarium, collecting yellow tangs for fish breeding projects. I've supplied species for Waikiki Aquarium. I've also supplied Oceanarium, Sea Life Park. We sell to local places that cater to tourists. Monolani Resort, the Ko'olina, there's many places utilize our services to satisfy the tourists need to see these fish that are so beautiful in Hawaii. And we want to share the ocean with the tourists. A lot of my good friends and dive partners work at dive shop instructors, and we want to support all dive shops across the United States, and specifically Hawaii. These are my friends, and I want them to succeed, and without the dive shops being healthy, we can't get our tanks filled or buy our dive equipment from the dive shops. So we don't have any, but just a few people, an outstanding few people that oppose us that are work for the dive shops. HRSA, the local association of dive shops, basically support us. Of course, misinformation has led to conflict with some individuals. So anyway, I've worked with Dr. Waki, USDA, with the puffer die-off populations for samples and try to survey exactly what was going on with those problems. Fish populations studies. I've helped with fish propulsion studies for submarines. I've helped with underwater archaeology with Noah and Hurl. I like in taking researchers out on my boat with me when we go scuba diving. University of Hawaii shark research people.
Summarize?
And we
have lots of testifiers, so if you can summarize.
So yeah, we have more sharks than ever, more fish than ever. There's no need for this bill. I'm seeing it firsthand, 35 years, and just seeing clouds of fish everywhere is testimony itself that this bill is not needed. So please do not pass 873. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Robert Whitner.
Thank you again, Chair Ng and committee members. I was asked to bring proof of coral damage. I've separated these. These are actual photographs of Jim Lovell, who's testified several times here today, of his anchor chains and his nets in the coral on the Kohala coast. Can I hand these across, please? Sorry. These other photos are random shots of collectors on the Kona coast doing their work. Sorry. The aquarium trade's been out of control for years, and it's been a chronic problem. These handouts and photos will document the damage. I brought some reports in case you want to see them. I can leave these copies here. This is from Brian Tissot saying 7 of the 10 aquarium species surveyed were significantly reduced by collecting. The abundance of aquarium fish at collection sites ranged from 38% lower to 75% lower. This came out about 2 weeks ago. Ocean life faces mass extinction, but the trade here would have you think that Hawaii is excluded. I think it's important to point out that what you see here today, many of these people testifying, are the aquarium trade's Hawaii workforce working today in a legislative hearing. What you don't see here today is the vast majority of Hawaii people working at their jobs. Ward Research did a poll a couple years ago showing 67% of Hawaii people want the trade banned. I think it's important to point out that the aquarium trade grosses billions, $4 to $5 billion, but leaves only $2 million in Hawaii. Or is it 20 million? In 2008, which is 7 years ago, Richard Z. of Hawaii Sea Life, major dealer here, he told a group of key Hawaii leaders in Senator Ross Baker's conference room that he alone ships out 1 million yellow tangs per year. He also reported that Hawaii has 15 high-volume wholesalers the state knows about, and another 10 the state doesn't know about, tax-free. Then comes poaching. Former DAR Administrator Dan Polhemus told the same group, we estimate the total catch at 2 to 5 times the reported catch. Richard Z. estimated gross revenue then at $20 million. A yellow tang leaves Hawaii for $3, but retails for $50. It could live 45 years on a reef. And you're going to hear quite a bit today about fish are up more than ever before. That's on the areas closed to aquarium collecting. That's 1/3 of the Kona coast. It's 140 miles of uninterrupted coral cover. 2/3 of the Kona coast suffer unlimited aquarium take, where the fish numbers are down by 50 to 80% in any given year. That includes last year. And 80% of Hawaii reefs are algae dominated. The aquarium trade takes herbivores, which are algae grazers. As I say, the testimony you're hearing today in person tends to be weighted by the aquarium trade because they drop everything for these hearings. Others have jobs to work, but the consensus is overwhelming, and I urge you to support HB873 and return Hawaii to what it deserves, which is healthy reef habitat, reef species, and happy people. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next up, we have Alma McGoldrick in support. Oh. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Ng and the others. I'm just a lowly citizen. I don't belong to many organizations. I belong to some, but none of them have that much to do with fishing. I've snorkeled for about 40 years or more. I have seen a marked decline in fish. I so agree with the last speaker. Statistics are okay on one side or the other. Obviously, they're going to be biased depending on whether you're a fisherman or whether you're against it. The state gives out these permits to fishermen to take our precious resources on the reef. They don't give out permits to take trees from the forest, to just go up indiscriminately, cut down trees and sell them for profit. So why should they give out permits to take our fish, which are equally part of our much needed resources, as you have heard from different people? So I feel there should be a complete and absolute ban. They've had their day. these fishermen can go and either take tourists out to look at the fish if there are any left, because very soon there will be so few left, they'll lose their livelihood anyway. So I suggest they go out and find other work. They're all young, strong men for the most part, or they wouldn't be down there diving. And I think they could find something else to do in this economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Kiesel, in opposition.
I'm opposed.
Please state your name and...
My name is Ted Kiesel. I'm a session hire for the House of Representatives. I've been doing aquarium collecting for over 20 years. I collect feather dusters, invertebrates, and the cucumbers and the shrimp. I used to collect the fish, but hard time for take care of them. They die fast if you don't take care of them. But it's helped me to raise a family, pay my bills, because Hawaii is a real expensive place to raise a family. I had a full-time job, and I did collecting on the weekend. I oppose this bill. It's too broad of a spectrum to totally ban everything. You know, every law that's made, there's one right that's taken away from us. You know, if you pass this bill, it takes away my right to live, support my family, and eat. You know, I know if you pass this law, I'm gonna have to find another way to support my income. You know, but I oppose this bill. I strongly do. But for me, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I believe it's sustainable. The secret is you find a lot of places, and you keep rotating them like a circle. And if you continually go to one area and they don't come back, they don't reproduce, do their thing, you just let them go. You go to the next. You keep going. It's because like it'll be foolhardy for me to damage my source of income. If I can rape the place, then what? The next time I go there, then not gonna be nothing. Like, you know, animals do their thing, so you gotta let them do their thing, reproduce, and I think I can control my practices of collecting, but I can't control the other fishermen. And I really believe that, you know, the fishermen, we all know what we're doing. We police ourselves. Like, you know, if you get like the hui, get like about 4 or 5 fishermen, you're all doing the right thing. And then you get one fisherman, you're not doing the right thing. You're gonna talk sorry, tell him, hey, what's up, man? You know, stop. And if you don't stop, then you just report them to the authorities. That's all. You just couldn't have them black mark. Nobody gonna like you. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next we have Isabel Kang. In opposition. Bertha Basabi. Opposition. Kevin Brunson. In opposition. Michael Tusinardi. In opposition. David Dart. Good morning.
Good morning. I wish Cindy Evans was here for this. Mark Twain said a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting its shoes on. Well, the information supplied for the basis of this bill needs to be closely examined for validity. If you find that much of the information is indeed false, and the people supplying the information knew they were false, then their ethics need to be called into question. Let's go to Bill 873 there, and we'll start off with what the bill started off with. The United States Coral Reef Task Force has reported that severe overharvesting of coral by the aquarium industry occurs in Hawaii. Trouble is, the United States Coral Reef Task Force did not make that statement. I was told by Noes, Shannon Simpson from the Coral Reef Task Force, in an email to me after I called her, and I quote, "Again, this statement was not issued or approved by the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force, nor were we contacted about it before it was included in the legislation. I have inquired with some of my colleagues in the task force, including Emma Anders, Hawaii DAR, and we have been unable to find this statement anywhere in previous CRTF materials. I am now looking into how we might address this issue." That's a fabrication. There is no illegal harvesting going on, let alone any coral harvesting. DAR's Dr. Walsh states, we heard some concerns about the algae overrunning the reefs. It's just not a problem on the Big Island. Never has been, never will be, and I'll tell you why. And you probably don't realize that 100% of the coley and yellow tang are protected on the entire west coast of the Big Island. How? The breeder population is protected by our size limits. Right now, we have as many breeders on yellow tangs in the open areas as we have in the closed areas. We have more coley in the open areas than the closed areas. So as long as we have this huge population fully protected, we will never have that algae problem. It hasn't been there in the past, and I don't think it's going to be there in the future because we have an upward spiral of population. But I would like you to look into those allegations I mentioned about that false statement attributed to the Coral Reef Task Force of the United States, because they claim it did not happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julian Sprung in opposition. Jeffrey Eigenbrod in opposition. Hilda Vitalis, opposition. The following are all in opposition: Trixie Sakata, Tall Sweet, Matthew Ross, Christine Matthew.
Hello again, my name is Matthew Ross. I'm speaking in opposition to this bill. I'm a full-time commercial fisherman on Oahu. I have no plans to fish on the Big Island or any of the other islands, and I never will. The fish population here has been stable throughout our fisheries history. The places I fish today are the same places that some of these guys behind me have been fishing for 40 years, and the generation before them were fishing before them. There are enough fish on this island after all of that to sustain me and my family, and I know if I'm allowed to fish, and I'm allowed to fish right, I can feed my family until I'm no longer able to dive, and that will be many years from now. As a fisherman, I believe very strongly in conserving what we have. Without sustaining the resource, we're done. We need to maintain what we depend on. I've worked. Before I went into the fishery, I got a marine biology degree from UH. Since that time, I've worked on many occasions with people at the state level to improve the regulation, management, and monitoring of our fishery. I think we've been very successful in many areas, and I think there's more work to do. But I know this is a fishery that can be managed properly. The fact is, anybody in Hawaii who owns a business should deserve the right, if they're following the law, treating everyone with aloha, and behaving properly, they should have the security that as long as they do those things, their livelihood will not be pulled out from under their feet. And that doesn't just go for us, it goes for all fishermen, it goes for people in other disciplines, farming. If you come here today, you take a fishery that has been documented to be sustainable. More recently, it's been referred to a number of times. The department released a 15-year report on the state of West Hawaii reefs. Read it if you have not, because that very clearly demonstrates how fisheries management has been working. If you close a fishery that's well managed, is sustainable, and supports local people, and these are local people, it's not people coming from outside the state taking fish and leaving. These are people born and raised in the islands, fishing, many of them fishing since they were kids, often for multiple generations. If you shut down a fishery like that, what message does it send to other fishermen? We need to make people buy into the idea that we can manage things, we can work together as a community. If you say you're a well-managed fishery, you're out. What does that say? No one's gonna work with the state to manage things anymore. Please do things the right way. The fact is, I don't do this job because I'm getting rich. I do it because fishing, keeping aquariums, and being in the ocean is something I've loved since I was a little kid. The fact I'm able to do this now, it's a dream come true. I wouldn't give this up. I mean, people who fish, we do it because it's our passion, it's what's in our heart. It's Hawaii, it's an ocean culture. Gathering from the sea and sharing it with people, earning a living that way is something that it goes back thousands of years. And we're no different. Just because we're taking a certain type of fish versus another type of fish, we have the same spirit. And I know people in my community don't disapprove of me. My neighbors, people I see at the harbor, people in other ocean businesses, we get along fine. Our community's backed us up. I mean, if you look at that stack of paper right there, it's not all people trying to get us. A lot of it is, but a lot of us people who depend on us and support us. When the fish we take, they're shared with the community. There's people the amount of people who can come to Hawaii, snorkel, go on a scuba diving tour, it's not that great. A lot of people who live here, a lot of people who visit here, cannot do those things. Those are the people whom our services are providing for. So just please keep that in mind. Everybody in this state has a place. I respect the tour people, I respect environmentalists, but we gotta all get along. You can't just kick one group out just because some people have a moral problem with it. That's just not how I think we should do things. Mahalo.
Thank you, Matt. Last on the list, Christine Mueller in opposition. Okay, we also had 537 testifiers in support and 590 testifiers in opposition. Is anybody in this room who wishes to testify? Please raise your hands. Should we walk through those? Yeah, that's what we'll go. All right, we'll start from the left side of the room. Up in front.
Glad I'm the first. Again, Kamanao Kasuga, 42 years old, fisherman, farmer from the Big Island, specifically Minoli'i Village. A very unique area. I was born and raised, mentored, taught, practiced a lot of what I do now. I've been hearing a lot of things going between two sides and everything. A lot of my knowledge has nothing to do with either side. It has to do with what I saw, what I've experienced. I'm not no scientist. I don't have the correct words whatsoever, but what I do have is knowledge of what I experienced personally. What I have experienced personally as a collector, in the 22 years I've been doing it, it's good. It's really, really amazing out there. I collect, most of my work is done in the most remote areas in Hawaii. Myself, my partner's here, the only boat that actually fishes in areas that no one else uses. And many would think that in these areas there would be a lot of fish. Yeah, it's nice and everything, but I choose to gather fishes in areas where a lot of people do collect and use. The reason why is because in these areas that are so remote, it's not as good as it is where we actually collect. And these are things that I've seen and everything. My life will be changed. My family's life, the community that I support, I teach, I feed. Many people in our village in Minoli'i will be affected by this bill. I don't know what else I would be doing. This is not a job for me whatsoever. This is my passion. This is what I do. This is what I love. I was taught that if practiced right, it's sustainable. It can sustain not just myself, and now it can sustain the future.
Okay.
I think that should be enough.
Yeah. No, it's
Thank
good.
you.
Thank
There's
you.
more coming up.
Yeah, there's so many people that want to testify. So if you could try to limit your comments to around 2 minutes, then we might be able to get through everybody. There's some people from the neighbor islands that might have to catch a flight, people who have taken days off from work. So, please value concision.
Hello guys, Makani Christensen again. Be here a couple more times testifying, but I'm here in representation of the Hunters, Fishermen, Farming Association that we started because we've suffered the same challenges across the board. A lot of these rules and laws that come to your office are many times emotionally charged. And all we have possessed within us farmers, us fishermen, and us hunters, is the actual, no kidding, I see this. This is what's here. This is what I observed throughout the last 40 years, 50 years. This is what I've been taught by my kupunos and passed down from generation to generation. And this knowledge is being encroached on, and our local way of life and sustainability, if you will, is being compromised. And when I say sustainability, I mean sustainability of jobs. So in this case, people will lose their jobs, about 100 aquarium permits, and these families have multiple people in their families, kids, children, grandchildren, that will all be affected. What move does Hawaii take for the betterment of all Hawaii? How do we be sustainable in jobs? How do we be sustainable with our resources? And a lot of it is sticking to the facts, especially in this case. If we can stick to the facts that this aquarium trade is sustainable, that these individuals have been doing it for so many years, and everything they do and everything that they touch is a direct result if they'll be in business next month, the following month, and throughout the years. So I appreciate your time, and I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Makan. This side of the room, in the back. Morning.
Hi, Joan Lloyd, Maui, in support of HB 873. I'm an ocean person. I'm a long-distance ocean swimmer. My teammates and I swim Au Channel from Lanai to Lahaina. Ocean swimming is one of the great loves of my life, and one of the reasons why I live in Hawaii. And if anyone in this room is a swimmer, you can understand why it's a lot more fun swimming in the ocean than looking down at black lines in a pool all day. Because when I swim, I get to see coral and fish. Some of these fish in Hawaii are endemic to Hawaii, meaning they can be found nowhere else in the entire world. Yet our current law allows every single last one of these fish to be extracted from Hawaii waters. Absolutely, gone forever. I applaud and I'm profoundly grateful to Maui County Council for requiring the aquarium trade to become legal on Maui, where our fish are now coming back. With few aquarium collectors remaining on Maui, or as some of the aquarium collectors have told us today, none, we're now seeing fish species that we haven't seen in years that were previously gone from Maui's reefs. We're seeing bicolor anthias, cleaner shrimp, exotic invertebrates like harlequin and marble shrimp in South Maui, and yellow tangs. The increase in yellow tangs is prolific. DLNR dismissed that as natural recruitment and told us that they dissipate soon, but they're coming back and in great schools on Maui. I want to emphasize that I eat fish.
Please summarize if you can.
My friends are fishermen, and this is not a fishing bill, so please pass HB 873.
Thank you. In the back.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I just heard somebody say that all the fish were targeted in Hawaii. And
Please state your name and
my name is Carl
stand
Thielen
in
from
the mic.
Yamane. That's my brothers right there. We all fish side by side. I fish for akuli. They fish for tropical. And we all get along. In Yamane, when we don't get along, you know right off the bat, you're going to find your trailer upside down, or you're going to find your tires off, your four tires gone. So that's how you know you're doing something wrong. She said that all the fish are targeted. Last week, Thursday, went out akuli fishing, and my pilot saw 3 schools, Lighthouse, Coast Guard Station, Elwood Beach. And our law says that the smallest eye we can use is 2.5. There was like 50 or 60,000 pounds sitting off the Lighthouse, just under Pouha size, which is fish that we cannot target because of our size, our gear restrictions. So we had to pass that. 50,000 pounds of fish is probably 150,000 pieces of fish. Then we had to pass the second school because the same thing, you know. And then the third school, what we knew was big fish, we targeted that fish. So you see what I'm saying? These guys, they have natural areas where they don't go because it's too hard to get the fish. Whether it's finger coral or big coral heads, you don't see them. You don't see these guys over there because the fish are too hard to target. There's plenty of places like that along the Waianae coast. Waianae coast is always, during the summer, it's always calm. It's heavy pressure over there. A lot of pressure over there. You see these guys fishing. They're fishing. Then if the markets don't want the fish, they don't go out. There's all kinds of variables that come into play when these guys, when all of us fishermen my markets cannot take my fish. I have to sit 2-3 days and wait for the market to sell all their fish so I can go out fishing. The same with these guys. Everybody has all kinds of things they have to deal with. They cannot go out there and pound their reef like all these people think. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right up in front. Thank you.
Hi. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Alan Hong. I'm speaking as an individual, but I was the former manager of Hanauma Bay for 21 years. I'm now retired. I was a commercial fish collector in 1971, 72, fresh out of college, and it turned out to be a really difficult way to make a living, so I moved on to teaching scuba instead, which I did for the next 35 years for the DOE and at the University of Hawaii. I think my feeling is that all of us have some impact on the ocean if we go into the water, or even living on an island and we flush a toilet or drive a car, we have some impact. And there should be regulations that control all of this impact, including fish collecting. But I am strongly opposed to this bill that would essentially wipe out the industry rather than try to regulate it. When restrictions were put in at Hanauma Bay to reduce the impact that was occurring there were some proponents that said we should just shut the place down completely for 10 years or forever, which would have eliminated one of the most valuable resources in learning tools or teaching tools to our society here. I feel that it falls upon DLNR to come up with strong guidelines to protect the resource and manage it properly so that it can continue to be available in the future, but not to wipe out the industry by slash and burn type of techniques. When I was collecting in the early 70s, there was also concern that type of activity would wipe out the fish population. So I find it rather ironic that those same concerns are being faced today with the same type of verbiage. I'm a past board member of the Hawaii Ecotourism Association, which promotes responsible tourism. So I am not against tourism, but I think it needs to be recognized that our populations have gotten so large here that the tour industry has to be considered one of the major impactors of our shorelines and even our roads and our housing areas, that we've got to look across the board of all the different factors that are impacting our resources and not just target specific ones. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Sorry that timer is so obnoxious, but yeah, we gotta try to move through everybody. We don't want to give anybody, cut anybody off at the end. Yeah. Oh, way over there. Actually, say your name into the mic.
Aloha, honorable committee members. My name is Doris Waihing Chu. My family's been here since the 1850s. One of my grandmothers was born here. I scuba very little. I gave it up. I snorkel very little. But when I was a child, I went out to Waikiki to help my dad look for seaweed, and there were a lot of fish there.
Sorry, in support.
There are no fish there now. Okay, the problem is, how many of you have seen Nemo? You know, that cute little clownfish Disney had? When they opened an area to let people 3 days hunt clownfish, and one day they were all gone. All the fish were gone. They didn't come back. Okay, Maui has zero fishing because of the laws there. The yellow tangs live 40 to 50 years in a aquarium tank. They live 1 year. It's not suitable for them. Aquarium gathering is a $33 million business. Ecotourism, tourists who come to dive and look at the fish and take photos, is $800 million business. We don't have sugar cane, we don't have pineapple anymore. We have tourists, okay? We're chasing our tourists away if we kill our fish. If you can sell a fish for $950 because it's rare, and it's only in Hawaii, once it's gone, it's gone. You have the mother fish and the daddy fish. And my parents said, if you don't have a mommy and a daddy, you don't have a baby. Okay, that's the problem. There used to be lots of black coral here. Remember black coral jewelry in the 60s and the 70s? We don't have black coral. It's pretty deep now. Okay, so in Hawaii, we should do what the Hawaiians did, besides not gathering these exotic fish that are nowhere else in the world. We should have a fishing ban for people who spearfish, fish who are 8 inches long and there's hardly any meat on it in Kailua Bay.
Oh, please summarize.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha.
Gentleman right here.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Randy Fernley. I own Coral Fish Hawaii for the past 40 years with my wife, and I strongly oppose HB873. Excuse me. Located in Aiea on Oahu, Coral Fish is the largest tropical fish store in the state, selling both saltwater and freshwater fish, aquariums, and aquarium supplies. The bill, if it goes forward, will be a death sentence for my store and my family, and I would also be personally responsible for over $300,000 in rent to my landlord for the term of my lease. Coral Fish Hawaii currently supports 15 employees and contributes well over $1 million to the economy of Hawaii each year. I feel that the lack of due diligence on the part of certain legislators is disgraceful. Legislators listening to vocal activists without actively investigating an issue and introducing legislation is the reason why I often question our democratic society. Over the past 35 years, Coral Fish Hawaii has contributed to the enjoyment of tropical fish to untold thousands of people within the state of Hawaii, not to mention the hundreds of kids who we have given our ongoing school lectures and tours to. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me stating that we helped them set up a small marine aquarium when their kids were young and thanked me for exposing them to the wonders of the ocean. If this bill were to pass, we would definitely close. No more lectures and tours for the keikis. No more fish in aquariums at hospitals, doctors' offices, and hotels. Simply no more fish for people to see and enjoy, especially for those who don't or can't go into the ocean. I believe that this bill is being initiated by big money from the mainland and select few vocal activists who feel that having an ocean aquarium in front of their $1 million houses trumps a locally sustainable and well-regulated fishery.
Please summarize.
I just like to say that I oppose this bill and hope that it will be not passed.
Okay. Well, I like to say, I like to apologize if we, lessen your public trust in the democratic, your own personal trust in the democratic process.
You can see how I feel that way.
Well, part of this hearing is exactly that. When one side's saying this isn't sustainable, the other side's saying it is. One side's saying there's animal cruelty. The other side saying we want to give the other side a chance to explain why.
I understand that, but I wish that legislators.
Part of the process of the legislature, part of the purpose of the legislature is to bring everybody on the table, because clearly out in the community with the the harassment instances and such, it's not taking care of itself. So that is the purpose of this hearing, and hopefully we can let the process play out and see where the public voice will.
I can appreciate that,
okay,
but
thank you. Okay. Up next we have in the back.
Aloha again. I'll try to make this very quick. Coral reefs are on the brink of extinction. That's just a Google headline when I typed in coral reefs. With an estimated 20% of reefs already dead, and that's possibly true. Certain areas, the reefs are dying. I support the aquarium trade ban in Hawaii. I don't think you can take a bird, a plant, or even a rock off the island. So how can you take a fish and destroy coral by doing it? I don't understand this at all. I want to care for and protect Hawaii with all of my heart. Please find the love in your hearts to protect. All these facts can be argued over forever. The fish are down, the fish are up. It's not doing this, it's doing that. You can slant these studies for whatever side you're on. But I'll tell you, I'm on the side of love. I love Hawaii. Please open your hearts and protect Hawaii's coral reefs.
Thank you. Anybody else from this side of the room? Not anybody from this side of the room? Gentleman in front.
Aloha. My name is Mel Malinowski from South Kohala. I support HB873. I'm the chairman of the South Kohala Reef Alliance, and our mission is to increase fishing. I think that we I keep track of more than 160 snorkeling sites all over Hawaii for the books that we write. And you've been shown mountains of scientific evidence. Everybody's telling you there are lots of fish or there's not, and we know how to spin data. You can emphasize what you want to hear and what you don't want. And one of the spins we hear, and we've heard it today, is that there are plenty of fish. We don't eat them all. Okay, it's okay to do this. Well, that's not what our kupuna say. The people, I work with the leaders on the Kona coast, and all of our kupuna, without exception, Annie Leigh Leitner, Uncle Francis Ruddle, Hannah Springer, Kanielo Kaka will tell you that our fish numbers overall have been declining. And we have, on our own work within Hawaii's reefs in the last 25 years, have seen this decline. One of the leading questions we get from our book readers are, why does Hawaii have so few fish? The arguments here today are going to muddy the water. There's a really simple policy question here. What is best for the majority of Hawaiians? Is it better for the majority of Hawaiians to have a small group of collectors, and it's a relatively small number of people, do this collecting and sell these fish to the mainland, or is it better for the majority of Hawaiians if they stay here? And what we have found on the Kona coast, what the local people say, is if we kept these fish here, it would benefit subsistence fishermen and recreational fishermen and the dive communities. So I urge you to advance this bill. Stopping this collection would be good for Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back. Apologize again for the beeping. we want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak.
Good morning, Chair,
Good morning.
Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Angela Huntemer. I'm a public school teacher, a mom. I'm in strong support. I wholeheartedly support this ban. Believe it's long overdue. Of course, collecting for the aquarium trade is not the only stress on our reefs. We have climate change, we have acidification. There are so many things like diseases and invasive algae that are affecting our reefs. And banning this aquarium trade would have a very small impact on the state as a whole. And it would just easily and immediately eliminate one of the stressors on our reefs. My brother keeps aquariums. My brother is in Ireland, where I'm from. I've lived here for 22 years. But I've talked at length with him about the aquarium trade and the pros and cons and all that sort of stuff. But he strongly believes that all the animals that are on sale should be captive bred. It's very expensive, it's very complicated to do, but he believes that they should not be taken off the reefs, not be wild caught. We don't do wild caught birds anymore. People have pointed out we don't go into the forest and dig up plants and sell them to the mainland. So why are we doing that with our fish? Also, our coral collection's been banned for many years. So why are we still taking the fish? It just doesn't make sense. As a teacher, you can educate your children. I actually had a tank of sea urchins in my classroom, and we used it with the first graders. We got the sea urchins from the hatchery, from the DLNR hatchery. We grew them, and then we released them to eat the invasive algae and Kaniawe. So there are many things that you can do to educate children without catching wild fish. In fact, you could teach them how to do something sustainable. Also, I'd like to point out in my written testimony, I did include an article from Hawaii Business from last month, and it talks about how much our reefs are worth. They're worth billions every year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha again. My name's Mike Nakachi. Kanaka Maoli to the Ahopua of Waimanalo. Now Malahini in the Waikoloa dryland forest amongst the Wili Wili. My dad was an ex-aku boat captain, commercial fisherman. And his fishery got displaced. And he ended up raising orchids, working at Foremost Farms up in Waikapunaha Street in the back of Waimanalo. I've had the privilege to dive with many different people. Uncle Robin Lee, collecting fish in the terms of cow fish by laying net, diving with Uncle Hao Mahoy, catching or going for black coral, jumping off, going 250 feet off of Haleiwa with Uncle Harold Bloomfield to catch fish in fish traps. So I've had the privilege of diving in the monument up to Kuri Atoll, and I live on the southernmost island. And I've had the privilege of diving all around these islands with our boats, and we've had this luxury and this privilege of doing these things. Again, I mentioned a privilege. I'm privileged to be born in such a beautiful place, and I take pride in everything that we have here in Hawaii. So again, I have to support this bill. It's something that we've had to, there's a lot of testimonial, and I applaud everyone, and I applaud you folks here for taking on this responsibility. But from my great-grandfather, from the Paki line, all the way to me today, to my kids now that are also working in marine affairs and going into scientific studies, it's not the same. It's not what it used to be. So if we have anything to do now by doing these type of bold initiatives, it's a step in the right direction for the future generations of Hawaii.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side of the room? If not.
Good morning. My name is Lois Crozier, and I support HB873. And I support the intent of it. Maybe it needs to be tweaked a little bit, but I'm in full support. And I've lived here for 20 years, and I've seen a marked decline in the fish, especially in Lanikai and Kailua, but that's a very little spot. The reef fish help our coral stay healthy. And last year we had an extremely severe coral bleaching event, and it was severe. The Nature Conservancy did a study in Lanikai Bay, and there's some corals that they think will not come back, and they think next year is going to be even worse. NOAA confirms this. And so I think that we need to take care of our reef, and if we take the reef fish off, they will not be eating the algae that support our reef. So anyway, I think that also because of ocean acidification with runoff and climate change, we need to be careful of our reefs, because with more severe storms, we're going to need our reefs even more than ever. Also, a large part of our economic prosperity is due to tourists, and a main reason they come here is for the island's natural beauty, and the fish are definitely a part of that. And the fish are worth more in the oceans than sold to people who want to put them in their tanks. They're very sensitive, and if they don't make it, and if they do make it to the tank, they don't last long. And just like that woman said, it's like the birds. They used to smuggle them into the country, and most of them used to die, and they've banned the import of birds, and you can only sell hand-raised parrots now because of that reason. And I think that's what we should do with our fish. And
you summarize?
Yeah, once you take them from the ocean, then they can't breed, and it's time to stop the raping of our reefs. And also, this bill does not prohibit permits for public display or scientific purposes. So when some people say that, that's not true. Thank you very much.
He's coming. Hello, you say your name?
My representatives. I just, in Maha'oi, I came inside the room, so I figured I was looking at the video. I've seen this hearing going on.
Yeah, please state your name. So
and it does kind of connect with me. I was seeing you a long time no see. And Chris, Caniela, I'm here because
can you state your name in the
Uncle Kuloloyo. I'm the chair for the newly birthing of the Ahamoko comedian. It's a challenge, and this is what it's all about. And I've been bombarded with all kind of the ballfish hitting me here, hitting me there, the coral getting all hokey, the ukuko, the polyps not growing, and come here. I am a traditional pest. I come from the families of the sea. And to start it short and simple, Honolulu Harbor was once called Ikikai o Kuloloia. That's my traditional Vahipana name. We need to correct that. Just recently, 28,000 fishes died. And nobody went go kokoa. It was molested. Yeah, this is what the bill is about. I'm not for and against it, but I think this bill is open one awareness of where Hawaii is going to be in the future. We need to pay attention. I have no answers. I support everyone in this room because now we're going to pay attention to it. Please pay attention what the bill is igniting. Any bill that talk about our resources, our kupuna. The fish is my kupuna. It's a living being. The coral, the uku ako bone is the polyps of the sea. You know what polyps means? Uku ako. Our kupuna head. You know what word is that? Polyps. Uku ako. Colonization. Dun, 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 dun. Our kupuna knew what was a colony. I'm going to end here. This is a good bill. Any bill is good that takes us together to come one. Any bill. And I'm facing as the po'o, the chair of the Ahamoko system. I'm proud. I'm going to stick to it because this is the kind of group I got to talk to. This is the kind of group I want to talk to. We all Kanaka Maoli. And we got a Malama, the ocean. Yeah? And so I'm going to end it here. Thank you for the time. Kaniel, I need to see you, Cynthia, in the future. Chris, and let's talk over. I need help. We need help. We all need help. We all talking the same language. We all could eat the same upena, the net. Yeah, for the future. And I respect my families of the sea, my Kanaka. All the families from Moanai. They know how to fish. We're not against each other. We're helping each other. So, Ekalamai, pray for me as the po'o. I've been bombarded with all kind of vala'au, yeah? But pray for me so I can be on good po'o for the Ahamoko system.
Okay. Mahalo.
You can bring everybody together. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Better.
Hello again. My name is Jerry Isham, one of the second generations of aquarium fishermen. I just wanted to get one thing straight real quick. There is no difference in fishing. Fishing is fishing. If I spill on Mimpachi, take them home, cook them, feed my family, or if I sell an aquarium fish that I catch in a deep where no tourists even stay, and I sell them and I take them home, I take that money and I go buy groceries. There is no difference. That fishing is fishing. As long as no more waste. That's what's supposed to be the issue. Local style is not no touch, no take. That's mainland style. Local style is you take what you need and no waste. That's local style. But yet we get in all these communities where it's heavily foreigners telling us, oh, not touch the aquarium, we think it's morally wrong. The facts don't work anymore. So now they come into it telling you, we just don't like it. And unfortunately, a lot of them is in your communities, which I understand. I hope you guys make the right decision, the best decision that you can based on data, facts, and not moral reasons, yeah? Some of the people, one said in the room, he eats fish. Snorkel Bob, he said he eats fish. Well, what kind of fish? Because just 3 years ago, he testified and he said, anybody who eat reef fish is an ogre. I take that as a personal offense. I eat reef fish. I'm a local guy. Okay? That's the truth. That's the God's honest truth. So, it comes a fine point in time where you know your place. I'm not going to go to Texas tell them how to raise cattle. You know what I'm saying? They get input. I'm not saying no more input. But, have respect. Don't come in and disrespect people and tell them they're not fishermen, they don't respect the ocean, they just come in and take coral. I don't break coral. I was taught by my father years ago. I've been doing this since I was 13 years old. I went full-time when I was right out of high school. Why not? My two brothers died with me. We know a lot of fishermen, like Carl said before. We know if somebody's doing bad things, we got to do something and take it. But I'm going to summarize. I am against this bill. And I totally support a sustainable aquarium fishery because it is in my best interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. If we could just focus on sticking to the merits of the bill, which is to prohibit the sale of aquarium fish, and try not to call out people by name. It's okay. Over here.
Hi, name Glenn Fukuda, collector on Oahu. And the aquarium industry is a huge nationwide industry. So it makes no sense to kill the industry for Hawaii. Make no economic sense. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Well, I'm opposed to the bill.
Thank you. Your brevity is appreciated. Mr. Ayla.
Hello
Chair, all members of the committee. I want to make sure that everybody knows I'm a state employee, but today I'm an individual, and my words are that of an individual. Testimony in strong opposition to HB 873. For the record, I want you to take a look at and consider the flaws and the findings of the bill. Because if the findings are flawed, then the premise for passing the bill is flawed. And I'm not going to call out anybody individually, but I'm going to call out the lies that are in Section 1 of the bill, okay? As a member of the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force for the past 4 years, we have never talked about over-harvesting of coral in the state of Hawaii because everybody knows it's illegal. It's also illegal to damage coral. Everybody knows that. But in an attempt to persuade you that and create an emotional basis by which you will make decisions that are not based on intelligence, that's why this finding is in this bill. The fact that the aquarium fish industry has been regulated by weather, has been regulated by market, again, goes against sort of this emotional argument that is made in the findings. Earlier, someone mentioned a study by Gail Grabowski. I know Gail, she's a very good professor. I love her, she's a good person, but you gotta understand, her students cannot scuba dive. So when they counted fish in less than 30 feet of water. These guys are diving 40 to 100 feet of water. You're comparing apples with oranges, okay? So in the 40 to 100 feet of water, believe me, get plenty fish, okay? I don't care what people like Gail will tell you because her studies aren't applicable because her students cannot dive. Real quick, the woman who came up here and said she saw clownfish in Hawaii, that would have been a real oddity because clownfish don't exist in Hawaii, so nobody could have caught them all. The 80%, if 80% of the reefs in Hawaii were covered or algae dominated, we would be in serious trouble. No tourists would be in the water right now. So I use that as a basis for saying, please, if you're gonna make a decision that's gonna impact a fishery that's sustainable, that provides jobs, that actually provides impetus for tourism for people to come to Hawaii because they're often wondering about the fish that they have in their aquarium, what is it like? And they come here, and that's advertising dollars that the HTA doesn't have to spend. Let's do it on facts, and let's not do it on emotion. This fishery has been sustainable for more than 30 years, will continue to be sustainable for the next 30 years as long as the numbers remain the same.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to answer any questions afterward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Sure. Anybody else from the side of the gentleman up front?
The last three testifiers, it's a tough act to follow. Pete Pasabi, Big Island Association of Aquarium Fishermen. No long stories. There's no collection of corals in Hawaii. That's been stated, and I'll restate it. Something that maybe only Cynthia knows about is something that took place back in the 60s and 70s. Coral used to be sold on the side of the road, painted pink and blue and yellow to the tourist. So the tourists were the last purveyors of coral buying in Hawaii. Hawaii reefs are not the third largest source of wildlife for the world. That's a total incorrect statement. The fish from Hawaii contribute 2% of the world trade. So that is an accuracy in the bill. Contrary to the bill's assertion also, as Mr. Ayla stated, we are the most regulated inshore fishery in the state of Hawaii, which I think is one of the reasons it's become so sustainable. If we're gonna use what's available as far as facts and figures to build this bill, you should go directly to the people that are involved in it, which is the DLNR and the DAR. A 2015 report just came out for the 5-year study. The numbers are in there. There's a study put out by West Hawaii Fisheries. Dr. Bill Walsh that came out with his testimony on the state of the management of the fishery on the Big Island. That should be looked at. 4 to 6 weeks fish live in captivity? No. Go to a study by Emily Monday, which was done through the UH. She did her PhD on tracking fish that left Kona and went to the mainland. That gives you a fact-based account of what happens to the yellow tangs when they leave. Ms. Umberger said that we should look at the science. I agree with her. It's the first time I've ever agreed with her on anything. Look at the science. It's available. And one just last quick thing. Recently, Maui was fined between $100 million and $300 million for discharging waste on the Maui's reefs. I think maybe some effort should be put on looking into that situation and saying that Maui is all cleaned up now. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else up front?
Good morning. My name is Judith Perino. I'm a 37-year resident of the Big Island in Kailua Kona. Everybody's pretty much touched on everything that I wanted to say. I am strongly opposed to 873. I would just like to make a couple other additional points that Hawaii's aquarium trade is one of the most best regulated nearshore fisheries in the world, without question. That every responsible scientific study, including the DLNR 2015 report that you recently got, says that the management practices currently in place have resulted in an increase in Hawaii's fish population over the last 15 years. And of the many components that affect the health of the reef and its inhabitants, the aquarium trade probably has the lowest impact over all the nearshore development, acidification, golf course runoff, other things like the high surf that we just had that probably trashed the whole coral base, so that there's not going to be many homes for the fish for a while. So those are just issues that need to be addressed and be taken into consideration. I think everybody here wants a vibrant and sustainable and diverse reef. I think that's one thing we can all agree on. No group is more invested in that than the people that make their living from the ocean. They are self-regulating. My husband, who has been in the industry since the 1960s on 2 continents, has never not been able to ship fish because there were no fish to ship. Believe me, he'd be the first to say, if I can't make a living at this, I wouldn't be doing it. So, you know, we need to take that into account. The bloom that we had this past summer, it extended to Maui. That's why Maui is all of a sudden getting fish that they never had before. There's never been collectors there, more than 2 ever, and they're the ones with the algae problem, not West Hawaii. So this bill just doesn't hold up under scrutiny, and as other people have said, the United States Coral Reef Task Force never made any claims about any coral being taken from Hawaii. I oppose this bill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. You weren't here earlier, so we're going to let the people who've been waiting finish off, and then we'll come back around. In this corner.
Hi, my name is Johnny Isham, and I oppose the bill. I just gotta say, we have no, here in Oahu, we have no conflict with any dive shops. Many of them support us. They have no problem. They say they see the fish out there. As someone's pointed out earlier, a bunch of the people that support this bill try to get the local dive shops on their bandwagon. She stormed out of the meeting because they weren't agreeing with her based on her lies. As for reefs, nobody breaking coral. I like to say nobody. No respectable fisherman is breaking coral. We need coral for fishes. If we destroy their coral, not gonna fish, there's nothing for us to catch. So I don't know what is the problem with their corals and whatnot. Nobody collect coral, nobody selling coral. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side of the room? In the back.
Again, Chair, thank you for the time. My name is Jim Lovell. I oppose this bill. And I understand that Chairman Ng introduced this bill by request, so I know this is not his information, but I did want to say our biggest problem we have in our industry is the amount of lies and misinformation that is disseminated. They stir up public opinion against us. They talk about the Gold Coast and how it used to be gold in color, yet they can't produce any pictures, and the lies are just incredible. And unfortunately, when it gets into these bills, it does not help. You know, the public, the general public who doesn't know what's going on, believes all these lies, and when they start seeing in the bills, they believe it. This, or we're harvesting a coral. We don't take coral. I mean, total fabrication. The regulations thus far have failed to maintain populations at critical species. I mean, again, lies. The populations up, like yellow tangs and coley, our two biggest fish we catch, are up like 3.4 million fish more now than there were 15 years ago. The numbers go up, not down. Declines in population, decreases by 70 to 90%. I mean, the whole bill is based on lies because they don't have any facts. You can't ban us based on the facts, so you have to put in lies to substantiate this stuff, and it's just getting ridiculous. We need to get rid of the misinformation and make sure we're introducing bills based on facts. So again, we come down to this whole situation of who's telling the truth, who's lying. It's been commented several times. 1998, I was sitting in the same room. There's about 4 of us here. Cynthia Thielen was one of them. The same committee. That's what they were asking then. Who do we believe? So part of Act 306, they established the Division of Aquatic Resources so that the legislature would have information at their fingertips to find out what is the truth. They're scientists doing their counts, getting information for you, and you have that resource available to you today. The 15-year report was just out. Every 5 years, it's mandated by law to come back to you guys to tell us what's the status of the resource. Okay? Your own department, your own people, your own scientists say there's nothing wrong. Everything is well managed. We have an advisory council in place for community input. That's where these people should be coming and talking and working out solutions if we have problems. But they tend to say all that information is a lie. They dispute it, and they say that, we need to ban these guys. So I ask you to please, look at your own department that was established 18 years ago in order to address this issue and see who's telling the truth or not. Thank you again very much for your time.
Gentlemen.
Chair, do you mind if I introduce some students that just walked in the room?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I want the audience to know we have students from China. We have Roger, raise your hand. Roger, hi Roger. And we have Crown, and we have Cap Shin. And we have Ryan from my office, and they're with the Shenchuan International Foundation, and they're here to learn about American state government. So let's give them a welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome. Thank you, Representative Evans.
Yes,
Hello.
Yamaguchi. I'm opposed. I don't know what else I can add. If any of you dive, we'll take you out. You want to see fish? We'll show you where. You pick the place, you pick the time. You want to see coral? We'll show you. That's our standing offer. Thank you.
Thank you. In this corner.
Good morning. My name is Eric Minnick, and I'm in opposition to this bill. I'm a full-time aquarium fisherman here on Oahu. There's not much I can add to all the opposition that was said already. There were many good points. I just want to add one new angle, and that's to say that, in my opinion, if this bill can't be substantiated on facts or scientific studies or basis, and if it's only substantiated on opinion to shut us down because some people don't like our industry, I think it establishes a dangerous precedent for shutting down other industries based on opinion alone. There might be people out there that don't like mechanics, there might be people out there that don't like gold miners or foresters. An all-out ban to shut down an industry based on opinion alone, I think is a really slippery slope to approach. Regulation to control the industry so it's done sustainably and in a correct way, I'm all for that. And in fact, we've been moving to do that. I think an all-out ban is too drastic of a measure.
Thank you. Keep in mind that precedent might have been set when we banned the use of boots for parked cars a couple years ago. In the back.
Good morning again. My name is Alex Garcia, in strong opposition to this. Everybody did make some good points, so I'll try not to be too repetitive, but this is what I'd written down. In regards to that precedent-setting nature that this bill has, I believe that's dangerous, because like Mr. Ayala had said earlier, that this is what we're calling a sustainable industry, a sustainable fishery, and I believe it is. A lot of us do And if we're gonna shut down a sustainable industry, I mean, what are we gonna, like you said, what are we gonna do in the future? In regards to aquarium fish or fish as in general being a public resource, sustainability is the issue, and we all, you know, it's a key word. You know, we all hear it every day now. This is a ban. This is not sustainability. This is an all-out ban, and like it's already been said, we're seeking a sustainable industry. That's what we want. Everybody wants that, but the people that don't, they don't want sustainable. They want a ban, and it's based on emotion, not, you know, not facts. I mean, I'm not a scientist like these other guys, and we can do the statistical game all day long and say, you know, these numbers say this numbers say that. You know, it's like an election polls, right? You can play it any way you want, both sides. So I won't say anything about that. All I will say is from my own eyes, it's been mentioned before that this year we had one of the best drops, we call it, of juvenile fish recruitment on the reef. I mean, I've only been diving for about, well, commercially for about 10 years, and yeah, I agree, like 10-fold best I ever seen, but that's just what I seen. And I'm Honolulu County, that's the only place I dive. In regards to the counties, I know there's a lot of opposition from Kona. I support my brothers and sisters in Kona that collect fish, and I don't really know exactly everything that's going on there, but in Honolulu, we don't have any problems. It has been said over and over. So a statewide ban is far-fetched, and I hope we don't go that far. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think I seen another hat in that corner.
Hey, how's it? I'm Derek Macalino. I've been tropical fish collecting for 11 years, and everybody said a lot of good things already, so I just wanted to say this, that the fishermen know how much fish there is, and from my experience, diving 11 years, this is how fishing works. There's 3 fish on a rock. You take 2 fish away, there'll be 3 more next month. If you leave 3, there's not gonna be 3 more next month. There's not enough food and sustenance for those 3 fish. So people that are saying there's not enough fish now, or maybe pollution made them push out a little further, the divers know where the fish are, and there are a lot of fish. And I oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the side of the room? Moving to the back.
Hi. Okay, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Karina Sugiyama. I'm co-owner of Wayne's Ocean World, and I am in opposition to HB873. Senator Sam Sloan said it best recently on Hawaii Public Television in regards to the GMO issue. His statement was, "Emotions always trump science." That is exactly true in what is happening in our industry as well. The emotions and the wants of certain individuals that are not from Hawaii have decided that local fishermen should not be allowed to make a living doing what they love and have been doing for over 50 years. Not based on facts and data, but rather on hatred. We as an industry take great pride in providing healthy fish for export so that people around the world can enjoy the beauty of our oceans. For the many people who can never come here and would never enjoy this beauty, we take the beauty of Hawaii to them. I am very offended by how these individuals portray us in the public eye, referring to us as animal traffickers and worse. And even though there are many definitions to that word, many people think of it as an illegal act. We are local law-abiding families providing work for other families and industries locally. I moved here almost 40 years ago and fell in love with Hawaii and its people. I married a local fisherman and tropical fish collector and have raised 2 great kids. My son is still at college in UH. My daughter has been living in the mainland since 2000, having gone off to college and financially not being able to come back. Since having our first grandchild a few months ago, my daughter longs to come home to raise her child. She and her husband came up with what they thought was a great plan, come back home to Hawaii and take over the family business. After all, she grew up in the business, having worked with us through her high school years and then in summers while home from college. This is every parent's dream, to have the family business continue through the generations. It was very sad for me to have to tell her no, because I couldn't, even though I want my grandbaby to be raised here in Hawaii, I couldn't have her come back home and try to take over a business that is constantly under fire. And I feel that it would make more sense, really, for the individuals that are so unhappy
Please summarize. We still have 2 more bills with
and
equal
can
amount of
adapt to
testimony.
this, that they should go back to where they came from. And our kids should be able to come back to Hawaii where they were born and raised.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please don't pass this.
Anybody else? In the back.
My name is Wayne Sugiyama. I'm co-owner of Wayne's Ocean World. My testimony, pretty much everybody kind of touched on it already, but there was a couple of things on there that I just did want to touch on, and it was actually in this, on the 4th paragraph of the bill. About 2/3 of the reefs, Hawaii reefs, are dominated by algae. Okay. And except for Pete testifying before me, no one mentions the 14 million gallons of sewage that goes into the ground every day on Maui in the sewage injection wells. And it seeps out. I think the EPA and the UH did studies on that. And it comes out as fertilizer for the marine algae. Okay. And so the question is, there hasn't been aquarium fish collecting on Maui for several years now. So why is that, to blame the aquarium fish people for the algae overrunning the corals over there? The 5th paragraph in that section 1 about 0.5%, that 0.5% GE tax, it doesn't mention the personal income tax. The 0.5% is only the tax that the people have on each sale of each day of their cash or so. So I am opposed to 873. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I seen a hand right here. Oh, we'll let him go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sure.
I'll be short, I promise.
Great.
My name is Ryan Rothwell. I just wanted to come up and say I oppose this bill. Nobody wants this industry more sustainable than these collectors and these people who are diving. They do a very good job of taking care and making sure that they do their part to leave what's there, and so that it's there forever. It's been proven again by all these people. It's been around for many years, and I think they'll be able to keep doing it the way they've been doing it, and it'll be there for years to come. Same thing too, everybody said stick with facts. Just make sure everybody's sticking with the facts and not just what people think about it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha, my name's Peyton Williams. I hadn't intended to speak today. I am an ecologist by training. I'm also a dive instructor. I came here as a dive instructor. I've retired twice to get here. I want to make I'm speaking in favor of the bill. I want to make 2 points of correction. One is the original comment that was made about the clownfish was not based on Hawaii.
Rather, comments at the committee, please.
It was about the Great Barrier Reef. They had a ban on collecting. They raised it for 3 days. After 1 day, all the collectors were gone and all the clownfish in that area were gone. So that was not here, it was elsewhere. One correction. The second one is, Hawaii is the 3rd largest supplier of aquatic life to the mainland. It's not to the world. Okay, I just want to make those 2 corrections to comments that were made as fact. There are lots of other environmental issues that are causing damage to or stressing of the reefs. And these include everything from not pumping septic systems, which in Virginia they require east of the I-95 in order to not pollute the Chesapeake Bay worse. And would be something that probably ought to be picked up here. I also ask that you all look at the Reef Environmental Education Foundation databases. which are collections of fish sightings done by people who are trained to a variety of levels, which means that there's some difference, but a lot of the common fish, such as saddleback wrasse and others, are included and people know of. I think that there's been a lot of accusations going back and forth, but I think that you need to look at some of the other facts on this too. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was all the testifiers. If there's anybody else? If not, members, any questions? I have a question for the department, and if there's anyone from DAR. Hi. So we've read your report, the 15-year report. It pertains mainly to the protected areas. There were some testifiers in support of this measure who spoke about the other areas on the west side of the Big Island, and they talked about how, you know, while 1/3 is doing very well in that protected areas, the other 2/3 of that coast isn't, and actually has seen a steep decline. Is that true?
I'd like to ask Alton to respond.
We believe that that statement probably is not true. I guess it depends on your context, but we do surveys outside of the protected areas as well, so we can do comparative studies. So yeah, it's not limited to just within the boundaries of the regulated areas. So based on that information, some species are higher density than outside and inside. It's a dynamic system, so not everything is black and white. So all we try to do is just to document those differences.
Okay. I wasn't around when the protected areas were established. You know, what were the reasoning? Was there a big decline at the time?
There was an interest back then that the aquarium fishery was depleting the reefs, and that conflict had been going on for a while, a number of years. It started before, when the state started to require aquarium catch reports specifically that was different from commercial landing reports. That occurred in mid-70s. And at that time, there was already a question about what was the impact of aquarium collecting, and was it too much? So we developed a reporting system that was specifically to capture the aquarium industry effort and the catch information. And so that database that we have, 40 years, starts in about the mid-70s. So from those times when there was this conflict that has been ongoing for many years, you know, there's been that question. So we're trying to look at the question more objectively from a scientific standpoint. So, but what was happening on West Hawaii specifically was, my understanding was there was a compromise reached between the aquarium collectors and the tour operators, and that compromise was brokered by then Representative David Tarnas, who was the chair of the committee at the time. Well, he wasn't at the time, but subsequent to his leaving the legislature, he was familiar with the industry, with the people, and so he brokered the agreement, I should say. And so from that agreement, the Act 306 was adopted as a compromise measure that the legislature felt was the best move going forward. And so within the Act 306, it talks about community involvement, talks about the 5-year review. So it set up what we have today.
Okay. There's been a lot of talk about science, and as committee members, show us the data, of course, but there's no perfect science, especially when you talk about natural resources or even social science. There's no way you can have a control variable and experimental variable. You can't replicate a reef in a lab, right? So it comes down to just counting and how we're counting and how we're reporting it. You speak of this database that was created in the 70s. How is that populated? Is it self-reported by buyers, sellers, collectors?
There's two sources of information that we use. One is the commercial landing reports. So commercial fishermen report to us monthly what they catch, what species, how many, where they get it from.
So self-reported.
That part of it is self-reported. We also receive reports from the dealers that buy from them. So we use that information as a verification of how close are we in terms of what is the fishermen reporting that they're selling and what is the market reporting that they're buying. Right? So we look at that to compare to see how close we are. And for the most part, we're fairly close. The second source of information is the visual counts that Dr. Walsh does. He's been doing for like 15 years, and he's one of the ways that we reduce uncertainty and variability in our counting method is that we do many surveys over time, and so that helps to reduce some of that variation from year to year, because we're measuring a live system. So every year things are changing. And so what we're looking at more generally is a trend, not a specific year. And from those two sets of information, we believe that we're in a good place actually right now.
So there's the self-reporting from the collector or the seller, and then the people who buy gets cross-checked with that, and then the counting of the reef.
Of the visual transit
of the marine life on these reefs.
Yeah.
But let's say I'm a collector. I get these. I find a bunch of fish. Some aren't good. I discard them. I accidentally killed some. There's no way that those would be counted because it's just whatever I report to you guys as sold. Basically, is what goes in record.
From what I understand of the fishery, I've been looking at the fishery since the beginning of my career 30 years ago. So what my understanding is that there's very little bycatch in the fishery. Bycatch meaning that there's very little species that they catch that they don't use, either sell or return to the ocean.
But now we're speaking just anecdotally. We're not speaking scientifically anymore.
There's if they don't report it, we don't have any statistics on it. So I think that's the question you were asking, like what is that uncertainty and how do we determine or measure that? It's anecdotal because there is no data.
Is there data of exactly where these, well, first of all, how many are there that are licensed to catch aquarium fish, like 30 to 60? We get all kinds of numbers.
Statewide, we issue maybe about 500 to 600 permits a year.
How many actually are out there?
How many people are collect? Well, the aquarium permit is actually a small mesh net exemption permit. So if you're using a small mesh net to collect these animals, then you need a permit, the aquarium permit, to legally use this small mesh net. Okay? But if you're not using a small mesh net, then you're not required to get a permit. And so in terms of the numbers of fish that actually end up in an aquarium tank, the majority are caught with nets because that's a more efficient method. But other people will go along the shoreline with their hand nets. They're not required to get a permit to collect in the tide pools and on the shoreline. Or if they're hooking fish in the tide pools, they take it home and they keep it in their aquarium. Those numbers aren't reported to us, and so we don't have any data on that.
Okay. Is there data about where exactly these fish are being collected from, and has that changed over time?
We do, in the commercial landing report, require information on where they fished and where they landed the fish, what port they bring it in to. So from the the areas where they fished, those areas have stayed stable throughout the 40-year period. And so the majority of the collection is, in terms of numbers, comes from West Hawaii. And the value is up on that, in that area as well. So that traditionally has been the most productive area statewide, and it continues to be so.
Okay, so it's not the case that, you know, fishermen are going from one area, once that's depleted or the fish move, then they'll go to the next area, and then the next area, and then there's a bunch of fish in this one area now, but all this rest isn't. That's, you can unequivocally say that's not the case.
From what I've seen of the data, how they fish is maybe you have 10 different spots that you fish throughout the year. And so the fishermen themselves will go to one spot and then they'll go to the next spot and then go to the, because they know that certain kinds of fish are there and they know that they can fish in those areas. And so it's not because they're moving because there's no fish in spot 2. Well, say they're fishing spot 1 and then they move to spot 2. So in the reason they move to spot 2 is not because spot 1 doesn't have any more fish. It's because what they, through practice, they've developed a technique where they said they don't want to over-collect in any one area, and so they spread their effort out. Even if there's a lot of fish there, they won't go back there for months because just they're rotating their crops, so to speak.
Okay. Any other questions for the department?
Okay. So I have Bill Walsh's report right here, and one of his recommendations is to establish a limited entry aquarium fishery. And he points out that, you know, if there's continued expansion, it could be possibly unsustainable if the industry continues to grow and expand. So what are your thoughts on that, establishing a limited entry fishery, and the feasibility of the department administering such a program?
Limited entry systems are more of a device where if you're concerned that there are too many people in the fishery, what you try to do is limit the number of people in the fishery. Okay, so a limited entry system only speaks to how many fishermen there are. It doesn't speak to how many fish each fisherman will catch. Okay, so a limited entry system has to be in combination with things like bag limit or a quota system of some kind. So the two can work together to actually cap the catch, but at the same time maximize the economic efficiencies in the fishery. So if you only have, well, I don't want to get too much into details, but the limited entry fishery, at this point, the problem that we're seeing is not that there's too many fishermen. But I understand that the industry wants to support that because what it does is it prevents new fishermen from entering the fishery. And so it reduces competition in the fishery when you don't have new people coming in. But I think what is a better situation is new fishermen coming in that are mentored in that they fish they fish responsibly rather than preventing new fishermen from coming in.
So in terms of establishing like take limits on individual fishermen, is that something, because I know I don't think we have limits, but we do have the whitelist in the West Hawaii rules. But that's something the department could do statewide if there was a decision to take action on that. Is that correct? Is that correct? You could create those limits in department rules?
We could.
You could?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's all I have.
Lee.
Thank you, Chair. With your discretion, I have just a short handful of questions, which we're going to get to. So let me actually get a couple other people at the table too. I believe Mr. is it Pasabi? I apologize. I have a question for you as well, and then Mr. Whitner in the back. And I guess you guys too, if you don't mind. So I've got just a couple questions, but let me start. Obviously, with what the point of the bill even is. So we're hearing that this industry is already regulated. So if it is so regulated, why even the need for this bill?
A lot of these regulations, I'm trying to be as polite as I can with the language. They were drafted by the by the Fox regulating the hen house. In the last administration, we saw representation of the aquarium trade in DLNR. And the rules package, for example, there were two rules packages, and they made much ado about them, saying that this would really regulate the trade. But the problem is that the rules were drafted by the aquarium trade itself. The white list in place now on the Big Island preserve 98% of the revenue stream. They have a euphemistic phrase called, DLNR does, called species of concern. What that means is they're very rare. They're not seeing them much anymore. Two examples, and I'll try to be as quick as I can, but the teardrop butterfly fish is iconic in Hawaii, and so is the blue line butterfly fish. The blue line is actually considered a relic species, nothing even similar anywhere else in the world. DLNR calls them experiencing a 100% decline in Pouha. The blacklisted species, for example, in the Honolulu rules package, blacklist means species they cannot take. They listed 3 species of butterfly fish. They caught 11 of them in 3 years. They have no market value, and that's why they say, well, we won't catch these. I can't remember which place, Big Island or Oahu, did not protect the Hawaiian cleaner wrasse. It's another iconic species. It's endemic to Hawaii, found nowhere else in the world. They're known to starve to death in 30 days in captivity without a bunch of other fish to clean. But still, they sell online for $50 each. They leave $3 in Hawaii. And then the other thing is, Act 306, establishing the West Hawaii Fisheries Council, calls for a report every 5 years. And Bill Walsh, who's the head of Kona DAR, is mandated to report every 5 years. He's been at this for 25 years, and it's a cottage industry with a vested interest.
If you just summarize.
In 1 year, he got more grant funding than the aquarium trade reported catching. And that's a fact. There's been a lot of banding of facts and not facts, and that's a fact. And so it's in his best interest to spin this. Fish are up in the Kona coast in the 1/3 that's protected. 2/3 are open.
Okay, so let me step off there into a question of what constitutes the universe of fish that we're talking about. We have the protected species, or the species to be addressed by the rules that we're talking about. The studies that have been mentioned before by DLNR, the 15-year studies and everything else. Are all these species being captured by both?
No, so there's this universe of fish. Well, this the marine life. Okay, part of that are commercially important species, and some of that are aquarium important species. And there's some overlap between the two, but not some species are not taken by either, and so it's a bigger universe than what is actually being exploited.
So I guess my question, getting into the crux of it, is, of all the species out there that we tend to monitor and value here in Hawaii, do we know what the numbers are for all of those within the context of both this study and the aquarium regulation white paper and all of that? So if there are reefs, for example, that are experiencing declines in particular species, or surges in particular species that aren't covered by either, how is this all being factored into which species we're targeting here, and which ones are making these various studies and lists?
The ones that are more commonly taken are either for food or by the aquarium industry or subsistence. Okay, so there's specific, like there's increased fishing pressure on certain species. And so those species are the ones that if we have commercial data on, we're tracking as the more common species. And so if we're seeing a decline over time in not just numbers, but in fishing effort, in catch per unit effort is the measure we usually use, we can make specific regulations for that particular species or group of species if we feel that management is needed to reverse a downward trend. And so we can do it by species, by family, by fishery, so we have a number of tools that we can use to address some of these concerns if we see them.
So I guess my question back to you is, what's missing from the list that you're concerned about?
Without going to the list, in the recent administration, right towards the end, there was a move to go ahead and pass this package of rules for Honolulu. At that time, the administrator for DAR was Fraser McGilvray, who refused to sign, saying this is like establishing a speed limit of 400 miles an hour. And the DLR director at that time said, if you won't sign it, I'll sign in your place. And Fraser McGilvray resigned at that time. And one of the big complaints was that the department has based most of its assessment on a measure called CPUE, that's catch per unit of effort. If a collector can catch 10 fish in a certain time in 2005, and he can come to 2015 and still catch 10 fish in that same unit of time, things are sustainable. But it's not true. CPUE is no longer a viable, I don't know that it ever was, a viable measure of sustainability, and that was the basis, as far as I can tell, of Mr. McGilvray's resignation. He said, this is crazy, this is not science-based.
Okay, let's stay away from that for just a minute. On the question of what constitutes a sustainable, Chair, go ahead. I just got a couple more. On the question of what constitutes a sustainable fishery, because we've heard this term from testimony and from everybody all morning, how is that defined?
It would take an hour
in 30 seconds or less.
Okay, so the state does not have a defined definition for sustainable, nor does it have a method for determining sustainable. The federal government has, under federal law, established procedures and a definition for what is termed state of overfishing or overfished condition.
Okay.
But they don't use sustainable as a measure.
Sure. And so I guess I asked the same thing to
well,
you.
Sustainable fishery to the Kona fishermen is that they can put the same amount of effort into their fishing that they've done over the certain amount of years, and it hasn't changed. Even though prices may go up or down or whatever, availability of fish or the abundance of the fish, if they can catch about the same amount of fish year after year, to them, that's a sustainable fishery.
And that's the definition of a collapsing fishery. And we can argue all day, and what you see here is the workforce of the aquarium trade laughing. And that's the situation we're in. And, if the committee needs to, ask for expert testimony on how to measure sustainability, it's available right here.
So before we just get into the whole thing, so just the point of this question, which I think is something that, I've been in the water my whole life, been diving. I used to catch quite a bit. In fact, I provided them to Coral Fish Hawaii back in the late 90s. So I have a very small idea of what goes on here, but I think part of the question is, in the calculation for what constitutes sustainable, I'm asking this to everybody, for example, if the calculation is what you can catch in a given unit of time and effort and all of that, and 10 years later, you're measuring that same sort of output, how does that take into account, for example, where the populations are migrating, or if you're depleting an area over here, now the same amount of effort goes into this different area over here, or a different depth based on the species, or what have you?
What we depend on is a long series, a time series of information to determine whether what we're seeing is an actual change in the resource or if it's just a year-to-year variation. The fact that we have a long time series, 40 years of data, gives us more confidence in determining whether or not that trend is going up or down, or if what we think we see in the data is actually what's going on. So what we do is we verify what the data says with the fishermen who have more experience in the water to see if what we're seeing is what's actually happening.
So, and I'm not going to open a further back and forth because I think everybody's going to conflict on what the data means to them in this context. But let me move on just to my last thing, which is, a lot of the talk has been about what we've got, particularly on the Kona coast, an FMA, or substantially managed fishery area, which provides for some protection so that you have the ongoing breeding species and everything else, and it replenishes the surrounding waters. So now you're creating a more sustainable, however you want to define it, environment. So I guess my question is, in other areas where you don't have that, and you've seen decline or changes in different species and things like that, ought we pursue something like that in those areas, and would everybody support that?
The way it works with aquarium collecting, and I was involved in the framing of 306 back in the day with David Tarnas. The coastline, the way it's situated, the protected areas now, the 35% of the coastline, the majority of the fish, and you can check with Bill Walsh, are larger breeders. A lot of the smaller fish are not in that area now, mainly because of volume of fish. The bigger fish are living there, the breeders are living there. It's harder for a small fish, a juvenile fish, to coexist without getting beat up and eaten and so forth. So that's in the protected areas. Now, when you go out of the protected areas to the fish areas, you're going to find a lot less of the breeders. They're going to be in real shallow water, but the majority of the fish you're going to find where we collect are the small fish, which are the fish that we target. We target the little guys. And so it's almost evolved where the FRAs are now protected and they're breeding fish, and the fish areas where we're fishing have a whole slew of the small fish, which is what we're collecting. And also it's not an attractive area for dive charters. So it works two ways. We're taking the small fish and we're staying out of the way of the dive charters. And that's the way it's evolved on the West Hawaii side.
What I've seen of the Kona coast is rolling hills of finger coral. Finger coral is endemic to Hawaii. It's found no place else in the world. It is a favorite habitat of yellow tangs. They're gone. And, I wish Mr. McGilvray was still here. He also said to encourage a fishery, and I don't even like calling it a fishery, but to encourage a fishery that targets juveniles is illegal in most other applications.
So just, maybe you can come back to me. I've got a couple more, but I didn't want to steal the...
No, go ahead.
Everybody's time. Okay.
Finish the line.
So, on that point, are you saying that the restricted area is not important to the fishery?
Oh, it's major. It's a breeding area. It's where the breeders... What happens is when fish breed, the fish go out into the water column and they drift. Okay?
Right.
So it feeds, and you get fish from other sides of the island. On some years, depending on how the gyres change, we get fish from Johnson Island.
So if it means increasing the sustainability of all the folks that are, all the fish that are subject to those areas, would establishing more of those areas in other places around the state in order to create a more sustainable fishery, even for you guys in those areas, would that be a positive step, and would that be something you'd support?
If there's an area that needs protection because it shows a depletion, I'd say, yeah, that would be a great idea. But if it's an area that's abundant with fish, you don't need to create an area because it's already abundant with fish. So if an area shows that it needs it, yeah, we're fishermen, tropical fishermen will be all for an area that needs protection.
Sure. And then lastly for DLNR, a lot of this obviously comes down to, in bottom line, enforcement, and whether or not we could put all the laws in the books, right? It doesn't matter if you can't meaningfully enforce. And as I understand it, DoCare has all the funding it needs. No?
No.
Okay, just wanted to put that out there. So, going to the permit system then, you said how many are issued per year, roughly?
About 500 to 600 a year.
What do we charge for each of those?
Aquarium permits have no fee. The commercial permit or commercial license has a fee.
How much is that?
$50 a year for residents, $200 for non-residents.
How many DoCare positions can that fund?
We don't use that fund to fund enforcement, but I don't know what the budget of enforcement is and how much it would cost.
I'm sure they wouldn't object, I'm guessing. But so the point I'm getting at is, if we're going to be using the department to try and actively monitor and manage this, is there something that can be done in the permit system, not only to help facilitate proper enforcement, so you're regulating the bad apples that are giving everybody a bad name and causing a lot of the problems that we see about everywhere online, and two, is there a way to change the permit system so that it's not just so it has a nexus with the goal of creating a sustainable fishery, so that it's not just saying we're issuing permits that have no real meaning because it's just a means of catch. And I didn't even use nets when I used to catch it. We used guns and stuff. What could be done in that respect?
I think the key question is not how many permits or licenses we issue, but how much is being taken. And so if we concentrate more on catch and being able to monitor the status of resources either visually or by improving our required catch report system, I think that information would provide us a better information than improving our licensing system.
So my very last question is, can we start a dialogue, and is there would there be support for trying to amend the permit system to ensure that?
Yeah, I think if you talk to the fishermen and you guaranteed that the money was not going to go into the general fund, which it seems to have a habit of going to, and the money was going to be directed toward enforcement, the fishermen would support something like that. It's like he was saying, it's the licensing is the reason they don't look at the licenses, because the market itself dictates in Hawaii the amount of fish that are called. There are quite a few fishermen out there that are having a really hard time because they don't have the history, they don't have the ability, they're not really good fishermen. So what's happening is the guys that are really good have cornered the market, and there's other guys trying to break in. So I think monitoring the fish at the source where they come out and keeping track there. But if you need more enforcement, I think the fishermen they'd go for a higher fee for their license if it was going to go to enforcement.
Or even within the scope of, we're going to allow X number of catch per year. I mean, you could basically put the permits out of bid if you wanted to do it that way to ensure the state
Australia does that.
Sure.
There's other countries that do that. Yeah, so.
If you want to limit catch, you're talking about more staff and more payroll and more budget. If you limit permits, and I think the aquarium collectors would go along with that, it puts more value on their permits that they already have.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Chair.
We have a couple more questions. Representative Evans first.
Okay, thank you. For the Department of Land and Natural Resources, recently there's a proposal in West Hawaii for a marine reserve, and if I'm not mistaken, the department has shown that they might support that. Is that correct? Or as Aquatic Resources, did you testify to the Board of Land and Natural Resources a few months ago on that marine reserve?
I'm not sure.
Kaupulehu?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, the Kaupulehu
Marine Reserve in West Hawaii.
Okay, what was?
Did you testify supporting that?
No, but I didn't. That was a proposal that the board reviewed because we were in the process of creating a regulation, an administrative rule for that. And so the first step in our process to create the regulation is to ask the Board of Land and Natural Resources for approval to hold a public hearing. And so that was the first step in the formal process of rulemaking. So,
for the members, can you say what a marine reserve would do?
I don't remember the specific regulations that are within the Kaupulehu Reserve, so I can't speak to. There's someone here that can, but if you're asking,
I think it's important that the committee hear about this marine reserve, because this is the area where there's fishery, FRMAs, and other no-take areas, but this marine reserve is along the same coast, and I believe the department is looking at approving possibly this marine reserve, which I find personally like it's conflicting information. If the department is saying we can manage and we're doing a great job in West Hawaii, however, we're going to do the marine reserve because why? Why are they doing the marine reserve? I can answer that. So, do you have someone from the department that can inform the committee? Okay, no, thank you.
Hi, my name is David Sakota. I'm the Marine Law Fellow at the Division of Aquatic Resources. So this proposal was coming from the community at Kaupulehu, and it has its origins in the desire for that community to have a community-based subsistence fishing area. But because of, I guess, the years of increased access to that area and more accessible fishing grounds which have depleted the food fish there, they wanted to give it a 10-year moratorium or rest period where the fish populations can rebound before developing regulations to limit the take. So eventually they want to be able to take fish from that area for subsistence, but there's not enough resources now to support that.
Mm-hmm. So, but what it would do is rest the resource where there is nothing taken from that coral reef for 10 years.
Correct.
Is that what they're proposing?
Yes.
Okay. But next to this reserve area, there is some fish replenishment management areas. Is that correct?
So the FRAs protect aquarium fish, which not many of them overlap with the subsistence food fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, it seems odd that we're in an area, same area that we're talking about, where there's supposedly you're actively managing West Hawaii, and there seems what I'm hearing is you think you're managing it, and yet now you have an area where they're asking for 10 years, nobody can go in there, and it sounds like you might support that. So I'm having a hard time that you're in the same region and you say one thing and it appears you might be doing another thing. So it doesn't make sense to me. That's why I thought the committee should hear this, because I think it's interesting you're exploring a marine reserve, 10-year no take at all in an area.
Again, this is coming from the community, and we want to work with the communities to take these types of proposals to public hearing. So that's where we're at now. I don't know what the testimony or further data will show, but from the community who fishes and who lives in that area and who sees and has seen the state of the resource, they feel that that's the need.
Well,
And
that's
so,
why we're here today, because there's a lot of community people say that they're out there swimming, and they will say, if you look at the blogs and what they're saying visually, the community goes out there and they will say there is less now than there was 20 years ago. So again, the community is coming out saying we see less. What we experience is less. And the blogs, especially on the Marine Reserve, will actually say that too, that over time in West Hawaii, 9, 10, 15 years ago, there was more fish. Overall, all fish, not just food fish. They say all fish. So if you're willing to listen to the community concern, it'd be interesting. I know you get this report, and I know there's the West Hawaii Fisheries Council, but what does Aquatic Resources Division do? What do you do in Honolulu? What do you do to respond to the concerns that we're hearing from the community? What do you do in addition than just this report coming from West Hawaii?
Are you referring to just aquarium fishing?
Well, yeah. Any comments that you might get about their concern of the fishery. How does the division respond to that?
Well, we review it with our biologists, and we engage with the communities, and we try to get the information, the best information that we can, scientifically as well as the traditional knowledge. And based on that information, we try to come up with what we think is the best management structure. And it depends on the area, it depends on the fishery, depends on the needs of the community.
So for West Hawaii, traditional knowledge, what have you heard about the aquarium fish?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Representative Lowen.
So just should be quick, and just a broader question about ocean resources in general. There's a lot of different pressures on our reef, and we're hearing, there's anecdotal evidence that there's less fish, and of course we're here today hearing bills about the aquarium fish trade, but of course there could be other things that account for that as well. So what do you think are the most, the biggest threats? What puts the most pressure on our ocean resources, whether it's aquarium fish collecting or recreational or non-point source pollution, water quality issues, or are there other factors that play into that as well?
I'm sure there are. There's a whole host of influences that affect the nearshore environment around Hawaii. There's climate change, there's ocean acidification, global warming. Those events are large-scale events, the ocean warming. So we see the coral bleaching problem, we see coral disease problems because of those kind of changes, we think. And so those larger influences, things like rising sea levels, we can prepare as best we can, knowing that there will come a day when the ocean level might be a foot higher than it is now. And so how do we prepare for those kind of events? Or if the ocean acidifies to a level where coral reefs are no longer able to exist in Hawaii, how do we prepare for those kinds of events? Some of the things we're looking at are if corals are dying, and we cannot prevent that, then how do we substitute for the structure that the coral reefs provide? So things like artificial reefs may become more important in the future as a way to mitigate that coral loss. But some things man just cannot control and we cannot prepare for. But the things that we are aware of, the sooner we're aware of them, then the longer we have to plan for those kind of changes.
I guess so. In terms of the things that we are aware of and can control, where does aquarium fish collecting rank in terms of what's threatening the resources?
Well, in my opinion, you have fishing mortality, meaning that fish dying from actually somebody fishing it. And there's a number of components to that. So commercial fishing, subsistence fishing, aquarium fishing, they all contribute to this fishing mortality. In the bigger picture, aquarium collecting is, in my view, a relatively small component of the total commercial fisheries that exist. And when you include recreational fishing and subsistence fishing, aquarium collecting is even smaller percentage of all of those. So in terms of the bigger problems that we're looking at, aquarium collecting is probably not one of those. But there's a lot of bigger problems out there for us to deal with.
So what does the department do to try to sustainably manage some of that subsistence and recreational and other commercial uses?
Some of the things we don't have a lot of data on subsistence level take and recreational take. So one of the things we're trying to do is do interviews, shoreline interviews, to gather some of that information about how many people are out there, what are they taking, how often do they take. So we have an ongoing now recreational fishing survey that attempts to look at that segment of the fishery that we have very little data on. We are looking at things like recreational fishing licenses and maybe a registration instead of a license. And then from that registration, you can find out who is out there fishing, and then you can survey those people to get better information on catch. So there's a number of ways that you can fill those gaps.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we're going to move to the next bill.